24 of this indictment, we also get to the part that allegedly takes place in the historic Manila Hotel. And actually in one specific room of the Manila Hotel. Quoting from the indictment, on or about February 8th through 10th, 2007, Fat Leonard hosted and paid for a lavish party and the services of prostitutes in the MacArthur Suite of the Manila Hotel. The indictment then lists the U.S. Navy officers who were allegedly there at this particular sex party, and then it says this, quote, during the party, historical memorabilia related to General Douglas MacArthur were used by the participants in sexual acts. Thankfully, the indictment does not spell out which memorabilia was involved or which acts. What exactly do they have of MacArthur's in the suite? I will say the pictures of at least one hat and one corncob pipe have been put on the internet over the years by people who say they have been to the Douglas MacArthur suite at that particular hotel, so there's that to go on. But I feel like this story, the Fat Leonard story, is amazing in its own right. But because it is so amazing, it's a really specific piece of evidence as to where we're at as a country right now. Because honestly, it seems impossible that a scandal this lurid, with details like this, it hasn't taken over your local newspaper by now, right? I mean, it's impossible that something this big and this over the top and this ridiculous is not a scandal of national fixation. But it's really not. It's really not. Because honestly, where we're at as a country, as scandals go, this thing can barely compete. I mean, there's no room in the scandal-absorbing part of our brains anymore because so many things are cooking all at once right now. For example, there's the case of the health secretary, Tom Price, who bought and sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock in healthcare companies while he was writing and sponsoring and voting on legislation that would affect the price of those stocks. In some cases, he was buying stock in multiple companies and then days later taking action as a congressman that would have the effect of inflating the value of that stock he just bought. And aspects of his stock trading while he was chairing an important health committee in Congress were reported by the Wall Street Journal, by CNN, by ProPublica, by Time Magazine, tons of places. But Republicans still confirmed him as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Well, you know what? Sometimes that kind of stuff comes due. You know what? News becomes history. And now tonight, ProPublica has a hair-raising report that when Preet Bharara, the U.S. attorney in Manhattan, when he was fired last weekend, unexpectedly and suddenly by the White House, one of the cases Preet Bharara was overseeing at the time, according to ProPublica, was a criminal investigation into Tom Price and his stock trades while he was in Congress. ProPublica is citing one source in their report. We tried all day to get further comment from anybody involved. The White House told us they weren't aware of any federal criminal investigation into the Health Secretary, Tom Price. Despite our repeated efforts to reach Tom Price himself and ask him if he has been notified that he is the subject of a federal criminal investigation, we got no comment from Tom Price or from his department, from HHS, about it. And actually, in fact, we didn't even get a no comment. We literally got no comment. We get dial tone, nobody home. Nobody even there to tell us no. Nobody even, usually what you get is, I'll call you right back, and then they never call back. We got nobody. If anybody out there knows how to reach the Department of Health and Human Services, let us know. We could not get a single freaking person to answer the phone all afternoon long today. www.sendittorachel.com. I mean, this Tom Price thing, this is the kind of thing that will hopefully result in Congress making some inquiries, right? It's no small thing for a cabinet secretary to be under federal criminal investigation. Just as it's no small thing for a U.S. attorney to be fired in the middle of overseeing such an investigation, if that is what happened here. So that's a big potential scandal. And we can't get anything out of the administration on it. Maybe Congress can. That said, Congress is busy right now. On Monday morning, in a normal universe, the biggest thing going on in the country would be the start of the confirmation hearings for Neil Gorsuch, the nominee to be the next Supreme Court justice. That is obviously a big deal. Those hearings are expected to go on for 4 days starting Monday. Democrats will likely oppose him in large numbers, if not unanimously. Democrats may also act procedurally to slow down this thing, to slow roll his nomination as long as possible. Substantively, Democrats appear to be focusing on his work defending torture and his enthusiasm for Guantanamo during the George W. Bush administration, but honestly, lines of inquiry, potential scandals can be hard to predict before these things get started. So we will see starting Monday morning. That said, I have to tell you, even the confirmation hearings for a Supreme Court nominee starting Monday morning, even those hearings are likely to be overshadowed by the other hearings that are starting on Capitol Hill at the same time on Monday morning. On Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, we get the first public congressional hearing into the links between the new administration and Russia. Former Intelligence Director James Clapper and FBI Director James Comey are due to testify Monday morning in the first open session testimony that we've got about the Russian intervention into the election to help Donald Trump and any ties that may exist between Russia and the Trump campaign. We have been reporting our little hearts out on this all day, and I can tell you that there are a lot of rumors circulating right now as to what Director Comey will testify about on Monday, what he will or won't describe in terms of ongoing investigations into links between Trump and Russia. But despite our best efforts, it's rumors only at this point. It's nothing we can report with any confidence as to what Comey is going to say. I mean, in this case, we're going to learn it anyway. We're going to learn what he has to say just by waiting. He's going to be testifying Monday morning. That's House Intelligence. Also today, the other inquiry, the one in the Senate, they made their first announcement about what's going to be their first public hearing into the Russian attack on our election. Senator Richard Burr on the left side of your screen, Senator Mark Warner on the right side of your screen. They together announced today that about a week and a half after we get Comey and Clapper testifying on Russia on Monday, about a week and a half later, on Thursday, March 30th, we're going to get the Senate starting their public inquiry into Russia as well. And the Senate hearing, I got to tell you, something I would definitely sign up for if it was a college class and I was still a surly college student. Look at the title. I have to say, this sounds awesome. Disinformation, a primer in Russian active measures and influence campaigns. Really? And it's in two parts. The first part in the morning is going to be the history and characteristics of Russian disinformation campaigns. And then the second part is going to be the role and capability of cyber operations in support of those activities. Yes, please. And can I sign up for office hours now with the TA and the professor? That sounds great. What's the title again? Disinformation, a primer in Russian active measures and influence campaigns. I would read that. I would read that if that was a novel. But that was just announced today. That's going to be on Thursday, March 30th. And we also got a related big piece of news today in the form of something that, basically in the form of something that wasn't announced. You might remember earlier this week, the NSA, FBI, and the CIA all got a letter from the top Republican and the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, and that letter asked about this guy, Mike Flynn. You know, it is a scandal in itself. It is a scandal surpassing and even eclipsing the alleged use of Douglas MacArthur memorabilia in a U.S. Navy sex and bribery ring in Manila. It is a scandal already of immense proportions that the National Security Advisor had to get fired 24 days into his tenure because of the content of his communications with the foreign government, with Russia. That is an enormous scandal in its own right, one that has a lot of unanswered questions still around it. And one of the important things that remains unexplained about Mike Flynn's firing as National Security Advisor is how anybody knew what he was talking to the Russian government about. Mike Flynn's calls with the Russians were apparently listened into by U.S. agencies who were surveilling those calls. And it's one thing to listen in on Russian government officials, but Americans are not supposed to be surveilled by U.S. agencies unless there's a court-ordered warrant that says it's okay to do so. Mike Flynn was surveilled. Why? Was Mike Flynn the subject of a warrant? If so, was it a warrant for a criminal investigation? Was it a warrant for a counterintelligence investigation? And in either instance, if he was on the warrant, if there was a court-ordered warrant to surveil him because of one of those types of investigations, how on earth did the White House end up appointing him to be National Security Advisor under those circumstances? So the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA all got a letter demanding that information about Mike Flynn by today. Why was Mike Flynn surveilled? Why was Mike Flynn, why were his contacts with the Russians surveilled by U.S. agencies? Tell us by Friday, March 17th. Tell us by today. That letter sent to the NSA, FBI, CIA, it was sent to them by one of the committees that oversees those agencies. FBI, CIA, NSA, they really can't refuse to hand over this information to the Intelligence Committee. But apparently, they're not doing it. I almost can't believe it. This is really, really not normal. The intelligence chair put out a statement today, sort of cryptically worded, but what it says is that of these three agencies who were sent this letter, who were told to explain this Michael Flynn thing, told to respond by today, of those agencies, only the NSA, quote, partially responded. The NSA apparently promised the committee that they will fully respond by the end of next week, but the CIA and the FBI, apparently they haven't responded at all. They haven't said beep. At least not by 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight, they hadn't. That's nuts. I mean, that's impossible. That's at least not normal. That is at least a really big national security deal. I know it seems like an arcane thing about who you communicate with and who you have to answer to, but you know what? If agencies like the FBI and the CIA won't hand over information like this to the committees that oversee them, that's a really big national security deal. That is not the way things work. I mean, those agencies may not want to hand it over, but they have to. They certainly may not want to release that information publicly, but they really do have to release it confidentially to the committee. These agencies, FBI, CIA, NSA, right? These agencies are overseen by Congress. They cannot say no to a request like this from Congress. But apparently, they're not answering. That's really strange. What's going on with that? One possibility is that Mike Flynn ended up on that surveillance in error, that it was done improperly or illegally. They shouldn't have had him on that surveillance. And in that case, the FBI and or the CIA may now be trying to get its ducks in a row, because it may be that people who work for those agencies are about to get in big trouble for mishandling this. That's a possibility. Another darker possibility is that there is some damning information about Mike Flynn here, about him being the subject of a warrant of some kind. And maybe the Trump administration folks who now head up the CIA and the Department of Justice, maybe they are somehow impeding the release of this information to Congress because it'll look bad for Mike Flynn and it'll look bad for the administration. I don't know. We don't know. But the FBI and the CIA not responding to the Intelligence Committee on this? That does not fly. Our Constitution doesn't work that way. They have to respond. And their non-answer is a big deal. The Russian attack on our election last year, the unexplained connections between the Trump campaign and Russia during that time, during the time of the attack, the strangeness, particularly the strangeness of the FBI and its treatment of this matter, it's unsettling. It's unsettling, not just because this is one scandal among so many scandals for this young administration. So many scandals that some of them are basically being ignored because they're not big enough to warrant attention amid other scandals, right? This is unsettling not just because it's one scandal among many. This is unsettling because if the worst is true, if the presidency is effectively a Russian op, right? If the American presidency right now is the product of collusion between the Russian intelligence services and an American campaign, I mean, that is so profoundly big. We not only need to stay focused on figuring it out, we need to start preparing for what the consequences are going to be if it proves to be true. We need to start thinking about how we're going to deal with the worst revelations if they do come to light, if they are proved true. And so tonight we're doing a special report. Tonight, what we're going to do with most of the rest of the show is we're going to start to try to do that thinking. Tonight we are going to talk to some of the people who were the first victims of what happened to us as a country when the Russians launched their attack. Real people who got hit first, who saw it up close and in real time. They haven't really told their story yet of how they experienced it and what damage it did at the time, before the country figured out what was going on. But they're going to start doing that starting tonight, starting here. They're going to start telling that story. It's our special report. It starts next.